His people watched, recorded, and archived, but never intervened. Until now. His message to the Council was broadcast publicly, breaking millennia of Tri-Year 3 after the withdrawal, brought a silence to the Council chambers that spoke louder than any debate. The Grand Hall that once hosted 47 species now held representatives from only 28. The others had left, choosing to negotiate independently with humanity rather than wait for the Council to fix what it had broken. Interim Prime Orthex was a modest being, a former minor counselor from a species that had never sought the spotlight. He had accepted leadership not from ambition, but because no one else wanted the burden of presiding over collapse. His shell, marked with the patterns of his long life, seemed duller now under the chamber lights. The reports he reviewed daily had stopped shocking him. Numbers became abstract when they grew too large. 40 million dead, 61% economic contraction, 800 colony worlds facing critical shortages. The figures meant little anymore. They were just measurements of failure. Jameen has responded, his aide informed him quietly. Orthex looked up with something resembling hope. Jameen served as an aide to Ambassador Taeyang, one of the few humans who still maintained any communication with Council authorities. Every message sent to human leadership went through him, and every response came back the same way. What does it say? The aide projected the message. It was brief, as all human responses had been lately. The Council's offer of reinstated membership with partial voting rights has been reviewed. Ambassador Taeyang's response insufficient. No further negotiation at this time. Orthex felt something inside him crack a little more. Partial voting rights. We offered them partial voting rights after everything that has happened. Some counselors felt that full restoration would appear weak, the aide said carefully. We are weak, Orthex replied. Perhaps it is time we stop pretending otherwise. In the outer sectors, the colonies that had broken away from the Council were beginning to stabilize. They paid premium prices for human services, but they received those services promptly and professionally. Trade routes were maintained. Medical supplies arrived on schedule. Agricultural systems functioned. These colonies were learning an expensive lesson. Human expertise had never been free. It had cost time, lives, and constant effort. The Council had simply never bothered to calculate that cost because humans had never submitted a bill. Now they did, and the prices were fair but firm. No discounts for former Council members. No special treatment based on species or history. Every transaction was pure business. Governor Thessia had been among the first to break away and negotiate directly with humanity. Vendara Station still bore scars from the Hessian flu outbreak. Empty quarters where families had lived. Memorial gardens for the dead. Medical facilities that had been overwhelmed and now stood quiet, but they had vaccine production again. Human medical staff had returned under contract, properly compensated with full authority over their own operations. The next outbreak would not find them helpless. She had paid for that security with territorial concessions, resource rights, and a formal public apology that her government issued to humanity. Some called it surrender. Thessia called it survival. Better to bow with dignity than to collapse from pride, she had told her critics. The core Council worlds had no such option. They had too much pride, too much history, too much invested in the fiction of their own supremacy. They continued to believe they could find a solution that did not require admitting complete failure. Councillor Drexen had vanished from public life after the military disaster. His attempt to seize human vessels had revealed how far behind Council military technology had fallen. Worse, it had proven that humanity had been deliberately restraining itself for decades. That restraint was now gone. Human defense fleets patrolled their trade routes openly. Their ships were faster, better armed, and operated with a level of coordination that suggested military doctrine far more advanced than the Council had suspected. A security analysis that Orthex had commissioned estimated that humanity could conquer the entire Council territory within 6 months if they chose to. They had the ships, the weapons, and the strategic advantage of controlling most functional relay stations. Why do they not simply take what they want? A counselor had asked during a classified briefing. The analyst, a former military intelligence officer, had replied simply, "Because they are not like us." Jameen sat in his office on Luna, processing the flood of messages that arrived daily from Council space. Desperate pleas, formal negotiations, personal appeals. Some were heartbreaking, Others were insulting in their continued arrogance. He categorized them carefully, flagged the important ones, and forwarded them to Ambassador Taiyang. Most received no response beyond automated acknowledgement. A few warranted actual replies, though those replies were rarely what the senders hoped to hear. A message from a Vendaran doctor caught his attention. It was not addressed to the council or to any official authority. It was simply a message to any human who will listen. My daughter died during the Hessian flu outbreak. She was 6 years old. I am a doctor, but I could not save her because we had no vaccine. I do not ask you to forgive the council. I do not ask you to return. I only ask that you remember some of us knew your value. Some of us spoke against the decision. Some of us tried to stop this. My daughter's name was Tessir. I wanted you to know she existed, that she mattered, that not all of us forgot what you did for us. Jamin read it 3 times. Then he did something he rarely did anymore. He cried. He forwarded it to Taeyang without comment. Some messages needed to be seen even if they changed nothing. Month 38 brought the final fracture. The council had fragmented into 3 distinct groups. The first had broken away entirely and negotiated independent agreements with humanity. The second, led by Orthex, sought complete reconciliation and was willing to pay any price. The third, a small but vocal minority, still believed military or political pressure could force humanity to return on council terms. That third group attempted one final play. They seized human assets on 3 council worlds, claiming eminent domain over abandoned property. They issued an ultimatum. Return to the council or lose all holdings in council space. The response came not from Taeyang but from the human assembly on Earth. It was broadcast, on every channel that still functioned, in council space. The Galactic Council has seized human property, without compensation or legal authority. This constitutes an act of piracy and theft. All human citizens are hereby advised to avoid Council Core territories. All trade agreements with Council Core worlds are suspended immediately. Any Council vessels entering human-controlled space will be detained. The Human Assembly considers itself in a state of diplomatic severance with the Galactic Council, pending full restitution and formal apology. This is not negotiable. The 3 worlds that had seized human assets found themselves isolated overnight. No human ships would dock at their stations. No human traders would deal with them. And critically, the relay stations that connected them to the rest of the galaxy were in human-controlled territory. Within 2 weeks, all 3 worlds had released the seized assets, issued public apologies, and paid massive fines. It was not enough to restore trade relations, but it prevented total isolation. Orthex watched this play out with grim satisfaction. The hardliners had finally learned what he had understood for months. Humanity held all the leverage. Every essential system, every critical trade route, every piece of infrastructure that truly mattered had either been built by humans or depended on human-maintained systems. The Council had assumed they owned the galaxy. They had discovered they had merely been renting it from humanity at no charge. He prepared his final proposal. Not an offer or a negotiation, a surrender. I am traveling to Sol System, he announced to the remaining council members. I will petition humanity for terms. Whatever they demand, we will accept. This is not open for debate. That is unconditional surrender, one of the remaining hardliners protested. Yes, Orthex agreed, because we have nothing left to bargain with except our pride. And our pride has killed 40 million people. He departed for Sol System 3 days later, leading a delegation of 12 species representatives. They were not diplomats coming to negotiate. They were supplicants coming to beg. The message they sent ahead was simple. The Galactic Council requests an audience with humanity. We seek peace. We seek reconciliation. We seek mercy. We offer everything we have and everything we are. Please let us speak. The response came from Taeyang after 48 hours of silence. Your delegation will be received on Mars, Olympus Mons facility, in 1 week. Come prepared to listen. Bring no expectations. Humanity will hear what you have to say. Orthex read those words a dozen times, searching for any hint of what humanity wanted. But the message gave nothing away. No demands, no threats, no promises, just an agreement to meet. He would discover humanity's price soon enough. Part of him feared it would be too high to pay. Another part feared it would be too simple, too fair, too reasonable. because that would mean humanity had always been better than the Council. And that truth would be the hardest burden to carry into whatever future remained. The delegation prepared for departure. B. Year 1 after the withdrawal marked the point where crisis became catastrophe. The Council had spent months trying to patch problems, applying temporary fixes to systems they barely understood. Each solution created 2 new problems. The relay network continued its decay. Ships that ventured between systems faced increasing danger. Navigation errors became common. 12 vessels disappeared entirely, lost in hyperspace because the relay stations could not maintain proper guidance signals. One of those ships carried 600 colonists heading to a new world. They simply vanished between jumps. The captain of the rescue mission that searched for them filed a report that spread quickly through underground channels. We cannot find them because the relay network cannot tell us where they are. The humans maintained real-time tracking on all vessels in hyperspace. We did not even know this system existed until it stopped working. The galactic economy had contracted by 61%. Trade between systems had become so expensive and unreliable that many colonies reverted to local production only. Worlds that had specialized in single industries for centuries now faced critical shortages. Administrator Krenix had stopped sleeping. His logistics network had collapsed into chaos. He spent every waking hour trying to route essential supplies to dying colonies, food, medicine, equipment, all of it crawling through space en routes that took 3 times longer than before. He received a report that a medical transport had been delayed so long that its cargo of vaccines expired before reaching its destination. 3,000 doses worthless. The disease they were meant to prevent killed 800 people on that colony. He sent an angry message to the human trading vessels that now operated independently throughout the galaxy. You could help us. You choose not to. How many must die before your pride is satisfied? The response came from a Captain Soyoung. Our pride was never the issue, Administrator. We helped you for 87 years. You decided our help was worth nothing. We accepted your decision. The medical crises had evolved from outbreaks to epidemics. The Hessian flu that devastated Vendara had spread to 6 other worlds. A respiratory virus on the Kethrin homeworld was killing elderly citizens by the thousands. A parasitic infection in the Outer Rim had no available treatment because the human research facility that developed the cure had been dismantled. The death toll had exceeded 40 million across Council. Space G1 received thousands of messages daily, desperate pleas from doctors, administrators, and families. She read every one. She cried over many of them, but she followed her orders and sent the same response each time. Observer status protocols prevent direct intervention in Council affairs. We recommend petitioning the Council for assistance. Some responses called her a monster. Others begged for mercy. A few understood and apologized for what the Council had done. Those were the hardest to read. The Council chambers had become a place of constant argument. Unity had shattered. Member species blamed each other for the crisis. Some accused humans of biological warfare. Others suggested the Council surrender completely to human demands. Drexen's faction had grown more militant. We must force the humans to return. We have military assets. They are traders and engineers, not warriors. They maintained our peacekeeping forces, someone pointed out. What does that tell you about their military capabilities? It tells me they know how to patrol and police, not how to fight a real war. Councillor Velthris had aged visibly in the past year. His feathers had lost their luster. His voice carried less authority. Military action against humanity would be catastrophic. We are barely holding our territory together. We cannot afford another conflict. Then what do you suggest? Drexen demanded. We have offered them everything. Full membership restoration, resource guarantees, formal apologies. They refuse to negotiate. Because they do not believe we have learned our lesson, a new voice spoke. It was Minho, a human who had served as a liaison officer for decades. He had retired to a neutral station months ago, but had sent a message requesting permission to address the Council. Veltris had granted it, desperate for any insight into human thinking. Minho stood at the speaker's platform, a middle-aged man with gray hair and tired eyes. You keep offering things as if this is a business negotiation. Full membership, resources, apologies. You think humans withdrew because we wanted better terms? Then why did you leave? Drexen challenged. Because you did not respect us, Minho said simply. You called our contributions adequate. You reduced us to observers after we saved millions of lives, maintained your entire infrastructure, and asked only to be treated as equals. We did not leave to punish you. We left because we finally understood you would never value what we provided. We value it now, Velthris said quietly. Surely you can see that. You value it because it is gone. That is not the same thing. Minho paused, choosing his words carefully. My people are proud, but we are also practical. We would return tomorrow if we believed things would be different. But we do not believe that. You are desperate now, but desperation is not respect. When this crisis ends, when you rebuild, when you no longer need us, what then? We become adequate again? The chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. It is not too late, Minho continued, but you must truly change. Not because you are desperate, not because you are afraid, but because you understand why you were wrong. Until then, humanity will remain observers, watching, waiting. He left the chamber. His words hung in the air long after his departure. Week by week, the situation deteriorated. The communication network had failed completely in 17 sectors. The Council could not even coordinate aid to those areas anymore. They existed in isolation, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Independent human traders operated in those dark zones now. They bought and sold goods, maintained local relay stations for premium prices, and provided services to whoever could afford them. Some council members accused humans of profiteering from the crisis. Captain Soyoung's response to those accusations was widely distributed. We trade fairly. Our prices reflect our costs and risks. We provide services you claimed were merely adequate. If you do not like our prices, develop your own capabilities. That was always an option. By month 15, 40% of council member species had begun independent negotiations with humanity. They reached individual agreements promising fair treatment, reasonable compensation, and respectful partnership. Those species received restored services, technology sharing, and trade relationships. The Council's core territory watched this exodus with growing alarm. Their authority was crumbling. Species no longer trusted the central government to protect their interests. Drexen's patience finally broke. He had watched his military superiority fade, his political influence diminish, and his species colonies suffer. He convinced a coalition of hardline counselors to authorize military action. One strike, he argued. A human trading convoy in neutral space. We capture their ships, seize their technology, and send a message. They will negotiate then. Velthris opposed the plan but was outvoted. The authorization passed with a narrow majority. 3 days later, a council military squadron intercepted a human trading convoy near the outer rim. 7 military vessels against 3 merchant ships. The odds seemed overwhelming. Captain Youngsu commanded the lead human vessel. He received the council's demand to surrender and submit to boarding. His response was calm and measured. This is a violation of neutral space treaty. We are independent merchants operating legally. Stand down immediately. You will surrender your vessels and cargo. This is by authority of the Galactic Council. Youngsu sighed. Very well. You were warned. What happened next was analyzed for years afterward. The 3 human merchant vessels were not purely civilian. They carried defensive systems that had been hidden during their years of council service. Systems that humans had developed quietly, tested privately, and never revealed. The engagement lasted 14 minutes. The council squadron was destroyed with such efficiency that most of the crews never understood what hit them. Advanced point defense systems, weapons that council sensors could not properly track, electronic warfare capabilities that shut down targeting systems. 3 human ships. 7 council warships. Total human casualties 0. They had disabled the council vessels without killing most of the crews, then jumped away before reinforcements could arrive. The recordings of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had considered humans soft engineers and doctors saw something different. They saw a civilization that had been holding back, restraining its capabilities, choosing peace while maintaining the capacity for overwhelming force. Drexen watched the battle recordings a dozen times, his blood running cold. Humanity had been members of the Council for 87 years. They had served in peacekeeping roles. They had access to Council military technology, and apparently they had improved on it so significantly that Council forces were obsolete by comparison. They were always this strong? He asked his military advisors. We believe so, Counselor. They simply never needed to prove it. High Arbiter Zelos, leader of the ancient Zel species, had remained neutral in galactic politics for 10,000 years. The first ships began arriving late in the second month. Not dangerously late, but noticeably late. A cargo vessel that normally made the run from Vendara to the core in 6 days took 11, then 13, then 15. Administrator Krennic stood in the logistics center, his mandibles clicking together in frustration. The mantis-like being had coordinated council shipping for 30 years. He knew the patterns, understood the schedules. Something had changed. "Show me the relay network status," he ordered. The display lit up with hundreds of connection points across council space. Green markers indicated functioning relays. Yellow showed reduced capacity. Red meant offline. There were 47 red markers. 3 weeks ago there had been none. What happened to these stations? Krennic demanded. The technician, a young Veltir, pulled up the reports. They show as non-responsive. Automated systems only. The last maintenance logs are from human crews 2 months ago. Send repair teams. We did, Administrator. They report the systems are too complex. The humans used proprietary encryption and authorization codes. Our engineers cannot access the core systems. Krennic felt a cold sensation in his thorax. How many relay stations did humans maintain? The technician checked his records. His feathers flattened against his head. 619 out of 847 total stations. The number sat between them like a bomb. 73%. Nearly 3/4 of the entire galactic relay network had been maintained by humans. Get me Council Prime Velthris immediately. While Krennic dealt with the transportation crisis, Governor Thessia faced a different nightmare on Vendara. The aquatic being floated in her specialized chamber, reviewing casualty reports that grew worse by the hour. The Hessian flu outbreak had started small, a few cases in the outer districts. Normally, the vaccine would be administered, and the disease would be contained within days. But the vaccine production facility had shut down 6 weeks ago when the human medical staff departed. How many doses remain in storage? Thessia asked her medical advisor. Enough for perhaps 5,000 people. We have a population of 3 million. Can we produce more? The advisor's gills fluttered in distress. The humans took the production equipment. What remains is locked behind access codes we cannot break. Even if we could access it, the process is extremely complex. The documents they left are basic operational manuals only. Nothing about synthesizing the actual vaccine. Thessia checked the latest numbers. 47 dead. 300 hospitalized. 8,000 showing early symptoms. The disease spread fast in enclosed station environments. Contact the human medical facilities in Sol system. Offer whatever price they ask. The message was sent. The response came 3 hours later from a Dr. G1. Vendara Station is Council territory. Under observer status protocols, humanity cannot engage in direct support of Council operations. We recommend you petition the Council for assistance. Respectfully, Human Medical Services. Respectfully. The word mocked them. By the end of month 3, the Council could no longer ignore the pattern. Emergency sessions were called daily. Reports flooded in from across Council space. Food shortages on 12 worlds. The human agronomists were gone, and the advanced farming equipment required maintenance no one else could provide. Crops were failing. Atmospheric processors were shutting down. Irrigation systems were breaking. Medical crises on 8 stations. Diseases that had been controlled for decades were resurging. The vaccines, the treatments, the diagnostic equipment, all of it had been developed or maintained by humans. Local doctors did their best with what remained, but it was not enough. The peacekeeping zones had collapsed entirely. 3 civil wars now raged where human forces had maintained fragile peace. Thousands died daily in conflicts that had been frozen for years, and the relay network continued to decay. Ships took longer to travel. Some routes became so unstable that captains refused them entirely. Trade slowed. The galactic economy began to contract. Councillor Velthris convened another emergency session. The chamber felt different now. The confident atmosphere from 3 months ago had vanished, replaced by tension and barely concealed fear. How quickly can we restore the relay network? He asked directly. Krennic stood to deliver his report. Administrator estimate is between 5 to 8 years to reverse engineer human relay technology. That assumes we can recruit enough engineers, and that the remaining relays do not fail during that time. 8 years? Drexen stood abruptly. That is unacceptable. Order the humans to return and repair the systems. We have sent 17 official requests, Krennic replied. All have been acknowledged and denied. Their response states that observer status species are not authorized to maintain council infrastructure. Then change their status back, another counselor shouted. Velthris raised a wing for silence. We cannot simply reverse a formal council decision without cause. It would make us look weak and indecisive. We are weak, a delegate from the outer sectors yelled. My colonies are starving. The humans fed 40% of the galactic population, and now that food system is collapsing. The chamber erupted in arguments. Species blamed each other. Some demanded military action against humanity. Others suggested negotiation. A few quietly wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. During the chaos, a message appeared on the main display. It had been sent from an independent human vessel, not an official government channel. The sender was listed as Yunji, identified as a former relay station engineer. To the Galactic Council, you are attempting to restart relay station operations without understanding the systems. I feel obliged to explain what you are facing. Each relay station requires approximately 2,000 hours of maintenance annually. This includes standard diagnostics, part replacements, software updates, and recalibration. You have 847 stations. That is approximately 1,694,000 hours of work per year. The Human Engineering Corps numbered roughly 8,000 personnel who specialized in relay maintenance. Your current engineering corps numbers perhaps 2,000 total, most without relay specialization. Even if you could access the systems, which you cannot, you lack the workforce. Good luck, the message ended. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over them. 1,600,000 hours of work. Every year, for decades, and they had called it adequate. We need to negotiate with humanity, Velthris said finally. Prepare an offer. Restoration of full membership, resource allocation increases, formal apologies. No, Drexen hissed. That is surrendering to their manipulation. They created this crisis deliberately. They created nothing. A quiet voice spoke from the shadows. It was an elder from the Kethran, a species that rarely spoke in council sessions. They simply stopped fixing everything that was broken. We broke it. They just stopped saving us from ourselves. Month 4 brought the communication network collapse. Humans had built and maintained 90% of it. Now messages took days instead of hours. Some sectors went completely dark. The council could barely coordinate its own emergency response. Governor Thessia sent a final report before Vendara's communication systems failed entirely. The Hessian flu had killed 4,000 people. Hospitals were overwhelmed. She had spent her planet's entire emergency reserves trying to buy vaccine from independent human traders. But the prices were astronomical and the supply was limited. Her last message to the council was brief. You did this. Remember that when you count our dead. Velthris sat alone in his private chambers reviewing the casualty reports and economic data. The numbers were staggering. But what haunted him most was a conversation he had had with Taeyang years ago, before everything fell apart. They had been discussing human contributions at a diplomatic reception. Velthris had asked why humanity worked so hard for so little recognition. Taeyang had smiled and said, "We do not work for recognition. We work because things need to be done. Because people need help. Because we can make things better." At the time, Velthris had thought it was diplomatic talk. Pretty words that meant nothing. Now he understood. The humans had not been seeking glory or power. They had simply been doing what needed to be done. And the council had called it adequate, dismissed them, and assumed everything would continue without them. He composed a message to Taeyang. A personal message, not an official council communication. We were wrong. I was wrong. Please tell us what we must do to make this right. The response came 2 days later. 3 words, not yet ready. The message reached Relay Hub 7 at exactly 0400 station time. Hyunwoo read it 3 times, then locked his office door before reading it again. 2 words on an encrypted channel that only the highest-level human personnel could access. Protocol Exodus. He had hoped never to see those words. Every human commander in council space had received training for this scenario, but most believed it would remain theoretical. A contingency plan that existed only in classified documents and emergency drills. Hyunwoo opened his secure terminal and began typing orders. Within an hour, Every human on Relay Hub 7 had received their instructions. They showed no outward change in behavior. They reported for their shifts as normal, maintained the equipment as scheduled, and interacted with the non-human staff with the same professionalism as always. But they began to pack. Mireille had returned to Mars immediately after the council vote. Her engineering command center occupied 3 floors of the Olympus Mons facility, coordinating human technical operations across 847 relay stations. The screens in front of her displayed the locations of every human engineer in council space. She opened the master plan, a document that had taken 15 years to develop. It outlined the exact steps needed to extract every human from council operations, without causing immediate catastrophic failure. The key word was immediate. What came after was not humanity's concern anymore. "Begin Phase 1, she said to her assembled department heads on the video call. "All personnel are to complete current critical maintenance only. No new projects, no training of replacements. Standard operation protocols only." "How long do we have?" asked one of the engineers from Sector 9. 8 weeks for complete withdrawal. Prioritize life support and safety systems. Everything else is secondary. Across the galaxy, similar conversations happened in medical facilities. Jiwan stood in the main hospital on Vendara Station, addressing her staff of 230 human doctors, nurses, and medical technicians. "We will continue patient care during the transition period," she explained calmly, "but we will not be training replacements. We will not be sharing research data beyond what has already been published. We will not be starting new clinical trials." A young nurse raised her hand. "What about the vaccine production for Hessian flu? We are the only facility that can manufacture it. Document the current stock levels. Ensure the cold storage units are functioning. Then prepare for shutdown. The production protocols are proprietary human research. They remain with us." The nurse looked troubled but nodded. She understood the orders even if she did not fully agree with them yet. On the agricultural world Tersus III, Soman walked through fields of golden grain that stretched to the horizon. This planet had been barren rock 20 years ago. Human engineers had built the atmospheric processors. Human scientists had developed the modified crops that could grow in the thin air. Human agronomists had trained the local colonists in farming techniques. She checked her data pad, reviewing the harvest schedule. 3 more weeks until peak season. Her instructions were clear. "Accelerate the harvest," she told her team. "We take everything that is currently mature. Shut down the atmospheric processors after we leave. Deactivate the irrigation systems. Pack the seed banks. The next planting season?" One of her assistants asked. "Not our concern anymore." In the Outer Rim, Daehyun commanded 6,000 human peacekeeping forces spread across 23 conflict zones. These were not glory positions. Peacekeeping meant standing between angry factions, negotiating ceasefires, distributing humanitarian aid, and occasionally putting yourself in harm's way to protect civilians who could not protect themselves. His orders were the hardest to execute. Full withdrawal, all zones, 4-week timeline. His officers stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, the Kaldor region will collapse into civil war within days of our departure." "That is no longer our responsibility," Daehyun said, though the words tasted bitter. "We serve at the Council's request. They have made their decision about our value." Week 1 passed quietly. The Council sent routine communications to human facilities requesting status reports and maintenance schedules. They received professional responses, stating that humanity was adjusting operations to comply with observer status restrictions. No one at the Council noticed anything wrong yet. Week 2 brought the first equipment shutdowns. Minor relay stations went dark, but the Council's own technicians assumed it was routine maintenance. They had never needed to understand how the relays worked because humans had always handled it. By week 3, Hyunwoo had evacuated 70% of his staff from Relay Hub 7. The remaining crew maintained only essential functions. When a Velthir engineer asked why the backup systems were offline, the human technician smiled politely and said, "Observer status protocols. We are restricting our activities to essential operations only." "But the backups are essential," the Velthir protested. "They are redundant safety systems," the human replied. "The primary systems are functioning adequately." Adequately. The word hung in the air between them. Week 4 marked the beginning of the medical withdrawal. Jiwan's teams packed up research equipment, sealed the vaccine production facilities, and transferred patient care to local staff with minimal handover briefings. "You cannot just leave," a Vendaran administrator protested. "We do not know how to operate half of this equipment." "The basic operation manuals are available in the station library," Jiwon said calmly. "Everything beyond that is human proprietary medical research. Under observer status, we are not authorized to share advanced technology. But people will die." Jiwon met his eyes steadily. Then perhaps the council should have considered that before their vote. Week 5 saw the agricultural exodus. Soman was among the last humans to leave Tersus III. She stood in the control room of the main atmospheric processor, her hand hovering over the shutdown sequence. "3 more growing seasons," the colony administrator pleaded. "Just stay for 3 more seasons. Teach us how to maintain the systems." "We spent 20 years teaching you," Soman said quietly. "Your people chose to learn only the basics. The advanced systems were always maintained by humans. You assumed we would always be here." She initiated the shutdown. The massive processor began its power-down cycle, a process that would take 48 hours. By then, every human would be gone from the planet. Week 6 brought increasing panic from isolated council facilities. Ships were reporting longer travel times between systems. Medical centers were running low on certain supplies. Agricultural worlds were sending concerning reports about failing equipment. The council sent formal inquiries to Human Command. They received a response from Taeyang himself. "Humanity is complying with observer status designation. We are consolidating our operations within human-controlled space. All council facilities are being returned to council administration. We are confident in your ability to manage your own infrastructure." Week 7 marked Daehyun's final withdrawal. His last unit pulled out of the Kaldor region on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, the fragile ceasefire collapsed. By Thursday, 3 factions were engaged in open combat. The council sent an emergency request for human peacekeepers to return. Daehyun read the message, marked it as received, and did not reply. Week 8 arrived. Hyunwoo stood alone in the control center of Relay Hub 7. Every other human had evacuated. The station still functioned, but barely. He reviewed the status boards one final time. Red warnings flashed across a dozen systems. Everything was running, but nothing had redundancy anymore. One failure would cascade into total shutdown. He picked up his single bag, walked to the exit, and paused at the main control panel. His hand hovered over the master shutdown sequence. The protocol did not require him to shut it down, just to leave. But Hyunwoo had maintained this station for 8 years. He knew every system, every backup, every workaround. He knew exactly how fragile it had become without human maintenance. He pressed the shutdown sequence. Not an emergency stop, but a gradual power down that would take 72 hours. Long enough for ships in transit to reach safety. Long enough for the council to realize what was happening. He walked to his shuttle and departed. Behind him, the lights of Relay Hub 7 began to dim. Across council space, the same scene repeated 846 more times. Humans departed in silence, leaving behind infrastructure that had always worked because they had made it work. The council received one final message from Ambassador Taeyang. Humanity has concluded its active participation in galactic affairs. We wish you well. Then silence. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched high above the delegates, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area designed to accommodate their unique biology. The air processors worked overtime to maintain the various atmospheric requirements, creating a faint hum that never quite disappeared. Taeyang stood at the human delegation's platform, his dark suit crisp and professional. He had served as Earth's ambassador for 12 years now, long enough to understand the unspoken rules of this place, long enough to see the patterns. Beside him, Mireille reviewed technical documents on her tablet, while Jiwon sat quietly, her medical bag never far from reach even in these political spaces. The session had been called to discuss resource allocation across council space. Humanity had submitted a formal proposal 3 months ago. The response had taken exactly 90 days, which Taeyang had learned meant the council had debated intensely before reaching their decision. Council Prime Velthris raised one wing for silence. The avian leader's feathers shimmered in blues and greens, marking him as elderly and supposedly wise among his people. His voice echoed through the translation devices worn by all delegates. The human petition has been reviewed. The Council acknowledges humanity's contributions over the past 87 years. Taiyang felt Mirai tense beside him. That word, acknowledges, carried weight in Council politics. It was not the same as recognizes or honors. It was barely above notices. Velthris continued. However, the Council must consider the broader picture. Humanity remains a young species by galactic standards. Your kind has held membership for less than a century. Many here have participated for thousands of years. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Taiyang saw several delegates nodding, their various appendages moving in what their species considered affirmative gestures. Councillor Drexen stood from the military section. The reptilian commander's scales gleamed under the lights and his teeth showed when he spoke. Let us be direct. Humans request equal resource allocation. They request voting parity with elder species. They request trade route priority. He paused, letting his words sink in. What have they provided that warrants such elevation? Mirai's hand moved toward the datapad, but Taiyang touched her wrist gently. Not yet. Let them speak. Humanity staffs many relay stations, Drexen said, his tone dismissive. They provide medical services. They assist in agricultural development. These contributions are adequate at best. Sufficient for their current junior status, adequate. Taiyang had expected many responses, but that particular word stung more than he anticipated. Humanity had lost 3,000 engineers maintaining those relay stations. Jiwan's medical teams had saved millions of lives across a dozen species. Human agricultural specialists had turned barren worlds into breadbaskets adequate. The human military presence in peacekeeping zones shows their aggressive tendencies, another counselor added from the shadows. We cannot reward such nature with increased authority. Taiyang remained standing, waiting for permission to respond. It came after another 5 minutes of various delegates listing humanity's supposed shortcomings. Young, aggressive, impatient, demanding. The words piled up like stones. Finally, Velthris gestured toward him. Ambassador Taiyang, you may address the Council. Thank you, Council Prime. Taiyang's voice remained steady, professional. Humanity has served this Council faithfully since our admission. We have asked for little and provided much. Our engineers maintain 73% of the hyperspace relay network. Our medical personnel staff facilities across 40 systems. Our agricultural experts have increased food production on 18 worlds by an average of 300%. He pulled up holographic displays showing the data. Numbers, charts, maintenance logs. Everything documented and verified. We ask only for fair representation, equal voice in decisions that affect all member species. The silence that followed felt heavy. Then Drexen laughed, a harsh sound that his translator rendered as cruel amusement. You have been members for 87 years. The Velthir have served for 9,000. You wish to claim equal standing? We wish to be valued for our contributions, not judged by our age, Taiyang replied calmly. The motion is called to vote, Velthris announced, cutting off further debate. Humanity's petition for elevated status and equal resource allocation. The voting lights activated. Red dominated the chamber within seconds. 41 species voted against humanity's request. 3 abstained. Only 2 voted in favor, both species that humanity had directly assisted in recent crises. The petition is denied, Velthris declared. Furthermore, given humanity's continued aggressive posturing and unreasonable demands, this council moves to reclassify human membership status. Taiyang felt his jaw tighten. Reclassification could mean many things, none of them good. Humanity is hereby designated as observer status, effective immediately. Voting privileges are suspended. Access to council resources is restricted to essential humanitarian needs. This status will be reviewed in 50 years. 50 years. Half a human lifetime. 2 generations would pass before Earth could even request another hearing. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates seemed shocked, others satisfied. Drexen looked openly pleased with himself. Taiyang stood completely still for a moment, processing what had just happened. 87 years of service, countless lives saved, infrastructure built and maintained, and in one vote, humanity had been reduced to spectators in their own galactic community. Mirai stood beside him, her face carefully neutral. Jiwan gathered her belongings slowly, her movements precise. The 3 of them had worked together long enough to communicate without words. Taeyang touched his communication device. All human delegates prepare for departure. He turned back to face the council one last time. Velthris watched him, clearly expecting protest, argument, or anger. The other delegates waited for the human response with various expressions of curiosity or contempt. "We understand," Taeyang said simply. "Humanity will respect this decision." He bowed slightly, a gesture of formal acknowledgement, then turned and walked toward the exit. Mirai and Jiwon followed. Within minutes, all 23 human delegates had left the chamber in complete silence. No protests, no raised voices, no threats or demands. The council chamber buzzed with surprised chatter after the humans departed. Many delegates seemed almost disappointed by the lack of drama. "They accepted it rather quickly," one counselor observed. "Of course they did," Drexen replied confidently. "They understand their place now. Like all junior species, they will learn to serve without complaint." Velthris settled back into his seat, feeling a mixture of relief and something else he could not quite identify. The humans had been gracious in defeat. Perhaps they were more mature than he had given them credit for. In the corridor outside, Taeyang walked with his team toward their shuttle. His face remained calm, but his mind was already working through the next steps. He had sent exactly one message from his personal device, encrypted and brief. It contained only 2 words that would change everything. Protocol Exodus.